So I spent a lot of time on Pinterest looking up crafts that maybe look really cool but could be simplified or done in a cheaper way, because I'm all about finding like a cheaper way to make something that is really cool, something that you see online. And I saw this really cool thing on Pinterest that was it was a fish very similar to this. You could tell it was probably made of some kind of ceramic or something, and it was a little wall hanging. It was hard to tell from the picture how big it was, but I know it was for sale, and it was some kind of crazy price, like $40 to buy this cool little brightly colored fish. And yeah, it looks like something really cool that if you're, into like a beachy theme or like some kind of tropical decoration, this would be something cool. It could be like a gift to give someone or make for yourself. But I was trying to think about ways to make something like it, maybe a little simpler. It didn't need to have all the ornate fins and extra pieces hanging off of it, but could be just as cool. And I just thought this is the one I made actually, and it's really heavy, very sturdy. By now the pieces are all dry. It was made out of clay, and so you can handle it. And I did wait for them to dry before I painted them, but you don't have to. And then I put the string inside. I painted the back of it black just in case the pieces spun around so you wouldn't see just the clay color. But this looks like something like you could find this as like a cool little souvenir. If you're on vacation, like on a cruise somewhere and you get off on some island, I could see this being something in a little tourist shop somewhere. It's really cool. And then just painted with some really bright colors, but this could be done with all sorts of variations and different, the patterns in there. Just kind of see, I made some grooves and little shapes on there with the clay tools, but also use a lot of really simple stuff that you don't have to, you don't have to have all these Sculpey tools and things like that you use. You could use butter knives, you could use, forks, whatever, toothpicks even. I did use the toothpick for the eye. So I'm going to show the supplies I use, and I'm going to make another version of this today so you can see how easy it is to make something. And look how cool. It's got like the little movable spine in there. That is so cool. I know you could even do the back side too if you wanted to, but this is just so fun. I'm going to show what I used to make this. So starting with the clay. This is what I used for the clay. I don't remember what something like this costs, but I know you can get it at Walmart, and I know that this is 5 pounds of it in this huge container. And like I said before in another video, this is also a really nice bucket. So when you're done with the clay, think of it like you're getting a free bucket that you could use for mixing paint or storing things, because it's also got a nice little airtight lid also. So inside, here's the clay. This is what it looks like. It's very much like a natural looking something you find in the ground, and it is kind of like the stuff that they do with pottery on the wheel. And it has kind of a funky smell too. It's cold inside, it feels very wet, very muddy, and it will get on your fingers, and your fingers will start to feel kind of chalky and powdery, and it will get that film on there after working with this. But I'm going to cover it up for now just for a second, because I want to talk about some other things. I started thinking about the shape of the fish, and I thought, okay, that's really cool. I could probably freehand something like that, but if I'm going to show other people how to do it, not everybody can freehand stuff. Not everybody is comfortable or has a steady enough hand or even knows the shape of a fish to make something like this. It's even though it's a simple shape, but a lot of shapes can be hard to achieve, and you want it to be recognizable. You don't want this to look like something weird or something that's not exactly what you wanted it to be. So I bought cookie cutters. And I got these online. They were pretty cheap, like a couple dollars for the pack. And just a little 4-inch fish. And the cool thing about these is you can kind of warp them a little bit. And actually, I was a little disappointed in this one, because when it came in the mail, you see that little dent in it. It was kind of banged up when it came in the mail. I don't know what had happened, because it was in a box. It wasn't like it was in a bag and got crushed or anything. But when I opened it up, I had to force it back into the shape because it had gotten crushed somewhere in the delivery. So a little upset about that, but it did go right back to its shape. I didn't have to use any tools or hammers to bang that out. So I'm going to use this to get the shape of the fish. It can be a little hard to poke it works like if you're doing cookie dough, but it can be a little hard to get the clay out of this little corner. So you might need the help of something like, a little handle of a knife or something like that you can poke. Wouldn't use anything sharp that's going to leave much of a mark on there, because, it's going to mess with your design. You can use something to kind of scrape it out if you want, or you could just dig in, but I don't want to get the stuff under my nails. So I'm going to get myself a nice little amount of this stuff, and you can kind of see I'm not going to use very much at all, so you could make a whole bunch of projects out of this little bucket of clay. I don't know what it costs again. Like, I'm not sure if it was $8, $10, I don't know, but I do know that you get a lot of it for, it definitely wasn't over $10, I do know that. All right, so I'm going to use this amount. I'm going to cover the rest of it up so it doesn't dry up, and set that aside. And I also have some wax paper down on my work surface. I just don't want to get it on all over this cutting mat, because you know, it'll get a little chalky and then I'll have to wipe it off. And I'm just keeping it clean. Also, I know my wax paper is clean. It's not going to pick up glitter or anything I don't want on it. Although I might do some glitter on this fish because the other one didn't have any. So I'm going to just sort of keep it thick. You don't even need to use any rollers. I'm just sort of keeping in mind the shape and the size of my cookie cutter. And I'm kind of mushing this to that shape as much as I can. So that way when I go to stamp it and cut the shape out, I'm not actually cutting away that much and my fish can stay nice and thick, because I do want him to have, you know, some thickness, because I'm going to need to come in later with the toothpick or one of these awls and poke a hole through the middle. And if it's too thin, that will be really hard to do. You can imagine that. So I'm just squeezing a part here where his tail is going to be every once in a while, checking to see, do I have it where I need it to be? Don't want to have any areas fall short of this little stamp cookie cutter, so I want to make sure that it's got enough clay to cover the whole area. And I think that's pretty good. So go ahead and cut down. It's really easy to do this part. And make sure you press until you get all the way down and hit the table. And you can flip it over and kind of help it along. Then you pull off all your extra pieces because you want to save this. This doesn't get wasted. It's actually nice because this is really heavy clay too, so this whole piece is nice and heavy when it's done, so it just feels like really good quality craftsmanship, you know. It's just, you would never know you used Crayola $8 clay. So I'll just throw the extra back in the bucket to use for something else. And then very gently, you might need to sort of squeeze your cookie cutter or stretch it a little bit, but very gently just push your shape right out of the cutter. And again, get kind of careful around these little small parts so you don't leave any inside the cookie cutter. This is why it's probably best to use simple shapes when you're doing anything with cookie cutters, just because, you know, the smaller little pieces tend to get stuck in there. All right. You can always stick it back together though. This is pretty good clay that can form right back together as long as it's still wet. There you go. Okay, so now while it's still wet, I definitely want to, you know, while it's still freshly cut, I want to kind of go around the edges and just touch up those little areas where it might have maybe got messed up and my fingernail dug in there. It's kind of hard to do this with long nails, but, you know, just kind of pressing down on those little areas where I don't really want it to look like it was cut. I want it to look like it was just one whole piece. All right, you can wash this off. All this stuff washes off really easily, or just throw it into a bowl of water in the sink for now if you'd like to. And then you can use, I use different tools for cutting, but this I'm going to cut it into segments. So I'm going to cut it into 5 pieces, and that way it lets me kind of spread it out and do this sort of look here where they're all kind of separated. And so it also adds length to the fish, so we have more of something to decorate. So you could use something like this. This is just one of those paint knives. So you could go and chop it up with something like that. That's what I used on the first one. You could just use a regular knife. This is a pretty sharp knife, so I think I'll use something like this and just cut the tail. But you could also use, you know, any other little clay tools or anything you like to use. X-Acto knife, I think that's excessive, but this is really easy to cut. So just be careful with where you're cutting it. You know, make sure that you're not cutting away pieces that you might have wanted to save, and try to keep them all about the same size. If you need to, after you make the cut, just go and touch it up a little bit. Make sure you don't have anything hanging off. Okay, another one right there. I don't like that. This is a serrated knife, so it's leaving little marks from that. So that's why I'm just going and kind of touching it lightly, not to mess up the shape, but just to, you know, get rid of those little lines that it created. All right, and this won't be exactly like the other one. I want this one to be pretty different. I want to have different colors, different designs on it, so that's why I'm not going to try to match it up or anything. All right, and then we might have a skinny piece there, and then we'll have the head. All right. And don't worry, this all washes off very easy off your good tools. All right, so I'm going to use some tools to make some designs on there. Something different that I didn't do on my other one. So maybe like this one is just going to be, I'm just going to kind of do like that. Just making some shapes on there. I might even go back and do it again. That's cool. Just whatever comes to you, you know, whatever you like. I might do the same one, this one right here. This is just the head, so I'm gonna probably do just a little bit and leave that part and know that that's going to be where my eye is, which can be done like this with a little toothpick. There you go. And then, I don't know, but for my other ones, maybe one could just be dots all over. And this looks cool when you paint over it, you know, because then the paint kind of, if you're using two colors like I did on the first one, then the color just kind of falls into those little areas and it just looks kind of cool. Just wherever. Swiss cheese. All right, and then I'll do the same on this one. I mean, this is a good time to try practicing using some of your clay tools that you might not have gotten to use before. So just have at it, you know, do whatever you want. Have some fun with this and try some different tools out. All right, and then my last one, I don't know, it's the tail, and the other one I just kind of made it striped, like a mermaid tail or whatever. Oh, I know. That's right. This has this little neat little, I don't know, it's like a C shape on the back. I think it was for a mouth, but it looks like scales, so I'll do that. That's pretty cool for the tail. Neat. All right, there we go. Yeah, pretty cool. Alrighty. So now we can take that, where does it go? Toothpick, kind of make our holes through each little piece, kind of wiggle it around, and then you want to turn it. Make sure you don't want to do this gently so you don't accidentally mush up your design. Make sure you can see through it. Okay, gently set it down so you don't mess it up. Same thing on all of them. You're just going to go right through to the other side and try to hold it very gently, maintain the shape, wiggle it around as you pull it, and make sure you open up that hole. And I'm just going to do the same on all of these. So now that the holes are through the middle of all of these, each of the 5 pieces, I'm going to blow them dry a little bit with the heat tool, just so they're kind of topically dry enough to paint, where I'm not going to be messing with them too much or mushing them around. So I'm going to show you how I will paint these up, and then I'm not actually going to string them just yet because they're still going to need to dry before they get strung up, but I'll explain how I did that, and it's just pretty easy. And use some twine or something like that and put the beads in between. So let me get these dried and we'll paint them, and then I'll talk about how to assemble it. So I dried them pretty well. They're still a little mushy. You know, I would probably, before stringing them up, I'd let them dry for a whole day just to be sure that you're not going to mess them up. And I'm going to start painting them now. So I'm just going to paint the color on the top, and then the sides I'm going to do those black. And so, I have the grooves in there. The deeper you made those grooves with the tools, the more of the little shape you're going to see when you go paint over them. I brought over the dryer so you can see what kind of tool I'm using to dry things. They talk about it, but a lot of people have never seen or used a paint dryer before, and so it's kind of neat to see what they look like. So this is the one I use. This is, well, I have 2 of them, so this is the cold one. This one's not hot, but it does get very hot right here on the tip. That's where the heat's coming from, so that metal part will get very hot. You don't want to get your hands too close to that. So if you're drawing something, you don't want to hold it right here. Set it down and get away from it, a few inches away. This is made by Recollections. It's a scrapbooking brand. Of course, they don't look like this when they're new. They're white or purple. In fact, I don't even know if they still make them, and if you can still buy them in the store. You might have to get them online, because that one, I haven't had to buy one for a while. I've had the same 2 for quite a while, so you might have to look online to get those if they don't still sell them in the store. Scrapbooking is not as big as it used to be, although it's kind of funny because now we have the Cricut, so you could do a lot more with scrapbooking with the Cricut, but people are not as into it as they used to be. People just don't print their pictures anymore. That's the thing. So my idea is I'm gonna use 4 colors, and I'm gonna start with blue, and with blue use my other colors in between, and maybe even like with a small brush or the toothpick, kind of do my accents if I feel like I need to, with the little smaller brush and the different colors to overlap them. So let's do green on here. I used these are Folk Art paints, so they're a little thicker, so I don't think I'll be needing another coat. But see, like, this is kind of cool. I don't think I need to do anything else because you can still see the holes as long as I don't put the paint too thick and actually take away those, so you can still see them. And so that's kind of neat. So there. And then I'm going to do, let's do yellow and then pink. Yeah, that's cool. The yellow might need another coat on there. And this way, since I dried them a little bit, and they're not totally dry, but I can at least paint them without worrying that I'm going to make marks with the bristles on the brush, so I don't have to worry about that. If I'm using a brush that's a little bit rougher, not as soft and gentle, so I don't have to worry about that as much. and it still is cool because it's got all the little grooves in there. Now I'll do my last one, pink. This is a really cool pink. I haven't used it on many projects, so excited to see it on here. Yeah, it looks really good. And then I don't know, but something about the black just gives it a nice little frame, a little outline on there, and just sort of makes the bright colors on top really pop, because then, you know, you're putting another color that just contrasts very well. So it looks nice to do it that way. There's that. And then let's see, if I just use a toothpick and just kind of get in some of these grooves. I might even just use black to do that. Just sort of go right back into those areas where I made the lines earlier with some black. Here. I know that the indentation is there, but this will just make it a little more obvious. And I'm also going to get in the eye a little bit, so just with some black on the toothpick, just a little bit in there. And it's just to give a variation, you know, a different idea, something you could do with your colors on there. But you could really do whatever. I think a lot of different things will look good on here because you got all the bright colors. And it just looks cool when you string it up and put the twine. It was a little hard to get the twine that I used through the holes. Either the holes were too small or the twine was too thick. So I would just say on second try I would use maybe a thinner twine, same kind of style, something like this, you know, like the hemp cord is cool, but I would maybe just use a thinner one to get through those holes. There we go. Yeah, and it's kind of messy, but that's kind of like what it's supposed to look like. It's supposed to look like it's, you know, it's supposed to look handmade. It's supposed to look very, I don't know, primitive. Just kind of cool. All right, that's that one, and then I'll do the same thing on the pink. Go into those little holes we made. Just put a little dot of black paint. This is a gloss paint, so it looks nice when it dries. It's nice and shiny. You saw that on the other one that I showed in the beginning when I had made the other day. So there. Okay, and then the last one has those little, this will be a little harder to do. It's got these little things here, so just do your best. There. Just following the shape of them a little bit. I won't get too crazy with that. Okay. I don't know why, but the toothpick just seems to do a better job than a, you know, like a fine brush or a liner brush. It seems to be doing this job a little bit better. It's almost like I'm just using a pencil or a pen to do it, because, you know, it doesn't, the bristles move around a little too much, and sometimes that freedom and flexibility can be not exactly what you want when you're trying to do something like this, trying to get into a certain spot like that. Using something that doesn't move unless you tell it to is a little bit better for something like this. Okay, there we go. So I got all of them ready to go. Now you just need to paint the sides black, which I can do that now, but I won't do the bottoms because that part will need to, I need to have the whole thing dry before I can go and do that. So I'm just going to do my sides black, and then I might blow them dry so I can come back and flip them over and do the backs. All right, so I did blow them dry. They might be a little sticky, but for the most part, they can be handled. I have these wooden beads picked out. I am going to try to string it up. I just cut myself a piece of a thinner twine so you can kind of see the difference. One's a lot thicker, and this one also has some areas on it where it's thin, and then all of a sudden it'll get really puffy and thick and kind of hard to work with, and so I didn't want to use that because I know it's not going to go through as nicely. This one seems to be a little more consistent in its size, and also it's just a little bit easier to work with. So on the top, I'm going to just make a little kind of a loop knot, and this could be the hanger. So just making this right here, I just knotted the loop, and that'll be the top, something to hang it from. And then I will start here at the first piece. I'll kind of twist as I go to make sure it goes all the way through to the other side. There it is, and I won't keep twisting. Just as soon as it comes out the other side, that's when I will pull it through gently. I have not painted the backs yet, so don't look at those. That'll happen later. All right, and then in between each one, I'm just going to put a wood bead. These are nice. I don't know if I got them at Michael's or Walmart. I hope I got them at Walmart. I want to say Walmart. So they're nice because the hole is easy to work with. It's nice and big so that you can get your string through there. It doesn't get stuck. Okay. There we go. And this will just separate each piece of the fish. Right, pull that through. Remember, the only thing left to do is paint the backs. And then for my knot at the end, I just do one knot, and then before I pull it, I loop it in again and do it twice, so that way it kind of makes a bigger knot. And then I just scoot it right up to the bottom and then just let it hang. You might want to cut off the extra tail in the end. And then, you know, if you want to, after you paint the backs and everything, you can always add a little bit of glaze. So this hasn't even finished because I'm noticing some of these dry glossy, but obviously the pink one was not. That was kind of a matte one. But you know, it's got that same sort of a wiggle to it. It can move around. These are really nice little decorations that you can hang maybe on a doorknob, or you can just hang them on your wall. But you know, I like the variety in the colors. So we've got like a couple different kinds here, and you can just see, you know, all the different ways that this can be done. This is a really fun one to do with kids too, because you know, you get a little messy. You know, I think it's really simple and easy to do, and you can just think about all kinds of different ways you could do this same thing using cutters in different shapes, you know, maybe like a starfish using a star or a flower or anything like that, you know, where the pieces are separated and a little more mobile like this. This is a lot of fun.